Welcome to the Midwest Center for Holocaust Education's White Rose Student Research Contest reception. I am Rita Sudhalter, Vice President of Education on MCHE's Board of Directors and Chair of the MCHE Education Committee. Over the past 26 years, the White Rose Student Research Contest has been an integral part of MCHE's efforts to teach the history and lessons of the Holocaust. Named in memory of German university students, members of the self-proclaimed White Rose were executed for denouncing policies of the Third Reich. The contest encourages young people to learn and write about the Holocaust from both factual and personal perspectives, and to be vigilant in protecting the rights of all people. We are grateful to members of MCHE's White Rose Membership Society, whose generous financial contributions allow us to offer this project annually. Special thanks to the Education Committee for their heartfelt work, and to the judges, many of whom volunteer year after year to assist with this project. And a special thanks to Union Station, who has generously donated tickets to our finalists and their teachers to attend the upcoming exhibit, Auschwitz, Not Long Ago, Not Far Away. This year's contest theme, Propaganda, asks students to use historical documents to research and examine Nazi propaganda aimed at those they wish to exclude and include from their racial community. Prior to the awards ceremony, and to provide context for the winning entries, I would now like to introduce Dr. Shelley Klein, historian and Director of Education for the Midwest Center for Holocaust Education, to share a few words about this year's theme.
Hello, everyone. Let me get the PowerPoint here. So often when we think about propaganda, especially Nazi propaganda, we almost always think about that excluded people. And I think what's really important is especially to look at both sides of it, looking at those that they wish to bring closer in and also those that they wish to exclude. And I think often when we think about propaganda, one of the first things people want to say is that it was a tool to brainwash people. And I think that it's really important to, at the very beginning, always think about the type of information that people consume, and knowing that Germans, who were an educated, literate society, made choices about what they were consuming and what they did with that information. So as we just heard, they had to look at both inclusive and exclusive, and also to reflect on this quote about from Eric Hoffer, that propaganda does not deceive people, it merely helps them to deceive themselves. So again, thinking about what it really means in terms of organizing people and having them make those choices. We also don't think about Hitler being so instrumental in propaganda. We often think about Goebbels. But Hitler was actually the Nazi Party's first propaganda minister. And he writes in Mein Kampf about propaganda. He says it's for the masses, and it needs to be addressed to the least intelligent element of the audience. So really aiming at a low bar, and it needs simple slogans. And this is something he did very well. These are also principles that we later see taken into advertising because they were so effective. One thing, too, that we have to think about is the fact that the Nazi Party, while it existed certainly for years before the 30s, was not very popular in the 20s. It was only because of the economic conditions that existed because of the economic crash in Germany that was preceded by our own economic crash that made the conditions possible for Nazis to gain a foothold. So very quickly, I just want to show you some of the examples of propaganda that we had students look at. Here's some election posters from those early years. And one of the things that you will notice in all of these is there is some anti-Semitism present. You can see here on this image of the snake, if you look closely, you can see that there is a Jewish star, and all of the terrible things that are happening to Germany that are represented by this snake they're also, tying the Jews in with that as well. The other poster here talks about the Treaty of Versailles. So in these early elections, Germans were concerned about what the Treaty of Versailles had done to them, and who were these forces that were working there. You'll also see, and these are something that we don't often think about, the wide appeal that the Nazis were making in society. So here are two posters that are focused on farmers. So they're not just looking to organize one sector, but really everyone. And these posters say, work, freedom, and bread. So a real positive message, right? Calling in lots of people to the Nazi message. These focus on the family, calling on women to help save the German family. And the Nazis can, by voting for the Nazi party, that will help save the German family. Keep in mind that women were new voters, that it was only under the Weimar Constitution in 1918 that they gained the right to vote. So even though Nazis want to sort of remove women from the political process, first they want to use them to get into power. Here's another good example of targeting different sectors. Here we have workers. So workers are voting for frontline soldier Hitler. And you see in this other image, you can see this worker who's sort of throwing out, someone who's appearing not to be German. So we can say this would be Jews, socialists, Marxists, that sort of thing. But we can already see these divisions being created. Same thing again, targeting students, another sector. And then here we have the strong German worker juxtaposed against the, again, communist Jews, these other weaker forces in society. So you start to see those divisions. The Nazi Party will be, in 1932, they will gain 37% of the national vote. It's not a majority, and it is the largest percentage of the national vote they will ever get in a free election. I say this all the time, but it can't be said enough. They didn't win in a landslide, only 37% of the vote. And you can see how unpopular they were in the preceding years. And it was, as conditions got worse economically, they were able to gain a foothold because they had the largest minority, even though it's not a majority. Their leader, Hitler, is asked to be chancellor. And so that's how he becomes chancellor of Germany. Very quickly after that, we start to see this program of, again, calling in those that they considered to be part of their racial community. And they call this Volksgemeinschaft. So organizing those, telling, you Germans, you're special. You can be part of this community. And if they only get 37% of the vote, that tells you that there's a lot of work to be done. So here's some programs they put into, again, this positive propaganda. This was a project called Strength Through Joy, which encouraged Germans to, enjoy their, the pastoral countryside of Germany, enjoy a concert put on for free by the Nazi Party, enjoy good German music. So when you look at this type of propaganda, it's very different than what we typically think of Nazi propaganda. Also festivals, come and enjoy a festival celebrating German folkways with your fellow Germans. You can see why this would be appealing. It also gave people money to go on cruises, which was something that, and provided cheaper cruises, which is something that, middle-class people didn't have. So making people feel privileged was a part of their plan. At the same time, they're also augmenting the differences among people. So here are the people that they deem to be enemies of the state. Those were not included in the racial community. That could either be people because of, their actual physical makeup. It could be people who, because of their beliefs or behaviors, were deemed to be enemies of the state and therefore would be targeted. And then, of course, the large group missing from these groups here would, of course, be Germany's Jews. So here's a good example of, again, what we ask students to do. You can see here's one poster that's showing this idealized German family. Notice how they're portrayed, right? So very strong, clean lines. There's very often, you can see the eagle in the background. There's very often an eagle somewhere in these family makeup posters symbolizing the state, the watchful, protective force of the state in the family life. And then juxtaposed against here is a poster talking about this woman was an alcoholic. And so because she's an alcoholic, she's, lived a life of sin and crime, and she's had all these degenerate kids, and she's filling up Germany with the wrong type of people. This is a sort of propaganda that would help them get people on board with programs like forced sterilization, eventually euthanasia, that sort of thing. Here's another juxtaposition. Again, we have this good German Aryan family, and it says, a people that helps themselves. So talking about providing, donating money to help families in need. Well, you can only get that help if you're the right kind of family. And again, another poster showing that here's this strong German worker, and he's being literally weighed down by the, criminally insane or those who are mentally handicapped, that sort of thing. Another juxtaposition, you have a quote from a Hitler Youth poster talking about German work and agriculture and labor and, real work, juxtaposed with another. So these are both aimed at kids. This is an image from a children's book called The Poisonous Mushroom, showing sort of the greed of Jews on this giant bag of money, emphasizing that they're getting rich off the labors of others and not doing real German work. Another children's book, if you have to move your the pictures of the people there, you can see better, showing these different body types and labor of between this Aryan German and a Jew. And then again, we have a children's magazine here juxtaposed with Der Stürmer, which was probably the most famous anti-Semitic publication during the Nazi time. And so you can see in a kind of a reference to blood libel here, this sort of, Jew consuming people. And then again, German youth juxtaposed with, these were supposed to be Soviets, but even just looking at the facial features of how they've depicted these individuals. So they're showing a lot of their racial science and health here. And then finally, on one side here under the included, this is something that Germans were encouraged to do every Sunday. So rather than having a lavish, Sunday dinner with, they encouraged everyone to make a small sort of cheat meal in one pot and then use all the extra money that they saved and donate that to families in need. And so there was a big campaign to say, like, on Sunday, we're all doing this together. Everyone's eating this one pot meal. And they would have posters, and they had these, you can see what's pictured here is sort of a public meal where everyone was coming together to eat this meal. That's juxtaposed against these women here who are having their hair cut and they're being publicly shamed, probably for having relationships with Jewish men. And their signs say, I'm being kicked out of the Volksgemeinschaft. So you have two really good examples of, public displays of what it means to be included, and a real warning about, even though you were born into this racial community, you too can be kicked out by your actions. And finally, this is a quote from Aldous Huxley, which I think is important and kind of mirrors the one we started with. The propaganda gives force and direction to the successive movements in popular feeling and desire, but it does not do much to create these movements. The propagandist is a man who canalizes an already existing stream. In a land where there is no water, he digs in vain. If we keep those words in mind as we think about the lasting lessons of propaganda, Hitler and the Nazi Party did not create anti-Semitism or the other divisions that they exploited in German society. So it's important for us, and perhaps the most important thing to take away, is to be wary of those who seek power by creating and augmenting division. Rita?
Thank you, Shelley, for sharing all those examples of propaganda. Despite the extraordinary circumstances surrounding the school year, students submitted 110 entries. Each was read and scored by 3 volunteers during a preliminary round of judging, and the top 5 entries from each division were then evaluated by our blue ribbon panelists, who determined the first place winners in each division. Many thanks to our standing panel of blue ribbon judges who have provided consistent excellence in our judging process. Dr. Andrew Bergerson, historian and professor of history at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. Dr. Kurt Graham, historian and executive director of the Truman Presidential Library and Museum. Rabbi Joshua Layton, rabbi at the Temple Congregation B'nai Yehuda and Rabbinical Association liaison to MCHE. And to Dr. Shelley Klein, historian and director of education at the Midwest Center for Holocaust Education. And now it is time to recognize the finalists and their teachers. This year, in addition to the traditional essay format, we were proud to launch a new category of competition, the documentary. We would like to recognize Catherine Crayon with the Sophie Scholl Pioneer Prize for being the first filmmaker in our research contest. Catherine is from Notre Dame de Sion High School, and her teacher is Penny Selly. Catherine, can you share with us why you chose to make a documentary?
Yeah, so at my school, I'm my school's video content editor, so I've always really loved videoing. And so, yeah, I just found it super interesting and it was really helpful.
Congratulations on being a pioneer in creating this format. We hope others will do the same. Now I will announce the 8th and 9th grade essay finalists. Students and teachers, we would like you to unmute yourselves, and as your name is called, please take a moment to say hello so we can all see you. From Oxford Middle School, Reagan Wald.
Hi.
Can we see Reagan?
Hi.
Hi. Isabel Makarov.
Hello.
Emma Smith.
Hi.
Anna Kruger.
Hello.
Glenn Bellachew.
Where?
And the sponsoring teacher, Andy Husted.
Hi, everybody.
Hi. This year's winner in the 8th and 9th grade essay division is Anna Kruger from Oxford Middle School, and her teacher is Andy Husted. So we now invite Anna to read her essay.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So if you could unmute yourself.
All right. I was coming home and there was a neighborhood boy with whom I had grown up, standing in front of our door in uniform and acted as if he didn't know me. Ayala Cole spoke these words about the discrimination she experienced as a German Jew living in Nazi Germany, an experience shared by Jews throughout the country. Before and during World War II, non-Jewish Germans saw and read anti-Semitic propaganda almost daily. This propaganda reinforced the message that the Aryan Germans shouldn't acknowledge Jews. Some propaganda created an environment of mistrust and hatred against Jews, while other types encouraged non-Jewish German citizens to stay true to Aryan ideals and celebrate German culture. No matter the type of propaganda, it was always repetitive. Nazi propaganda in the form of posters, magazines, and more served a dual purpose: to instill a strong sense of pride and nationalism in the non-Jewish Germans, and to promote and encourage discrimination and hatred of Jews. The rise of Hitler and the Nazi Party in Germany originated in the aftermath of World War I. In November 1918, Germany surrendered, and the resulting Treaty of Versailles wasn't favorable to Germany. The treaty included war guilt clause, a severe reduction of the German military, and $70 billion in war damages. The weak German government, known as the Weimar Republic, struggled to lead under the strain of the growing anger among the German citizens and the effects of the Great Depression, including high unemployment and inflation. German citizens desired a scapegoat to blame for both Germany's loss in the war and for the current conditions within the country. This desire for a scapegoat, combined with the hope for a better situation, caused the German people to willingly accept the Nazi message and led to the rise of Hitler and the Nazi Party. Between 1928 and 1932, the number of seats the Nazi Party held in Reichstag rose by 35%. In 1932, the Nazis held the largest minority in Reichstag, which led President von Hindenburg to name Hitler Chancellor in January 1933. Within months, the Nazis began to pass laws that discriminated against Jews as well as spread anti-Semitic propaganda throughout society. The Nazis' propaganda machine focused on two types of propaganda, one that supported the idea of a perfect Aryan German and the other that portrayed Jews as Germany's misfortune. Targeted at the perfect Aryan citizen, the purpose of inclusionary propaganda was to make non-Jewish Germans feel national pride and to establish a sense of belonging. The Nazis began producing this type of propaganda in the early 1930s to appeal to the Aryan men and women of Germany and present Aryans in the Nazi Party as the ideal. Found on posters and in magazines, the state-supported propaganda displayed the qualities of a perfect Aryan as someone with blonde hair and blue eyes who was tall and strong. Additionally, the propaganda established societal rules for the Aryan men and women and imbued them with a sense of national pride. The Nazis used these images to reinforce the message of promoting Aryan perfection while at the same time delivering Nazi ideology. Published in the late 1930s and early 1940s, Das Deutsche Modell was a magazine that appealed to German girls. Some of the covers portrayed Aryan German girls as blonde, healthy, and young. Through the utilization of softer colors and encouraging phrases, the propaganda had the ability to connect with German girls and inspire sacrifice for their country. By utilizing inclusionary propaganda, the Nazi Party portrayed Hitler as a hero to the Germans, persuaded the German public to join Nazi causes, and inspired the included to make sacrifices for the good of the racial community. While this type of propaganda was inclusive of German citizens, exclusionary propaganda had differing qualities and characteristics. More commonly used than inclusionary propaganda, exclusionary propaganda informed the German public of both the traits and dangers of Jews. Exclusionary propaganda portrayed Jews as repulsive and as enemies of the German public. A nationwide boycott of Jewish businesses began on April 1, 1933. During which anti-Semitic Germans painted the Star of David and the word Jude on Jewish storefronts. Additionally, the boycotts turned violent in some areas of Germany. Ultimately, the boycott was unsuccessful and the government turned to other forms of discrimination. 6 days later, on April 7, 1933, the Nazi government passed laws to exclude opponents of the state and to require civil service employees to prove their Aryan descent. To do so, these employees had to document the religion of their parents and grandparents or risk dismissal from service. In the following weeks, the Nazis passed similar anti-Semitic laws that adversely affected Jewish lawyers and doctors. The great masses' receptive ability is only very limited. Their understanding is small, but their forgetfulness is great. These words in Hitler's book Mein Kampf expressed his ideas over propaganda. Propaganda allowed an opportunity to place blame on the Jews. The propaganda slowly twisted the way that the German citizens thought, so that over time, German society began disgusted and repulsed by Jews. As Kohl and many other German Jews experienced, people who had previous relationships with Jews would no longer acknowledge them. Nazi propaganda discouraged association with Jews and established them as the enemy, calling them children of the devil. Violence and discrimination resulted from anti-Semitic propaganda. German society began to fear and exclude Jews, which originated from the ideas present in the propaganda. In talking about propaganda, American philosopher Eric Hoffer stated, "Propaganda does not deceive people and merely helps them to deceive themselves." Hoffer's statement expresses his ideas that humans are easily tricked by propaganda because they are already inclined to believe its message. I agree with Hoffer's statement. Humans by nature are selfish and arrogant, and throughout history there have been several examples of that. One of the underlying reasons for the Holocaust is that one group of people believe they are superior to another. There are several other instances where humans put themselves first as opposed to thinking of others, leading to disastrous situations or events. Propaganda can be a support in people's minds that they are superior to others. Propaganda in Nazi Germany succeeded in promoting the idea of a perfect Aryan German because those who believed the stereotype also believed they were superior. Jews became the enemy as portrayed in widespread propaganda because Aryan German citizens felt that someone else was to blame for their post-World War I difficulties. The government that should have served as a control against this selfish and superior thinking instead directed and oversaw the machinery promoting it. Through the manipulation of government propaganda, the Nazis directed the German citizens to place the blame and aim their misery at the Jews. The purpose of the Nazi state-sponsored propaganda was to promote and encourage discrimination and hatred of the Jews, and to instill a strong sense of pride and nationalism in non-Jewish Germans. The goals for inclusionary propaganda were to establish roles for Aryan men and women, to bolster German national pride, and to inspire the included to make sacrifices for the good of the racial community. The goals for exclusionary propaganda were to inform the public of the qualities of Jew and to portray them as the enemy. Propaganda factored into every German citizen's lives, and its effects were all-encompassing and devastating.
Anna, congratulations on your well-deserved success and your achievement. Well done. And now we would like to recognize the finalists in the 10th through 12th grade essay division. Again, we ask each student and teacher to say something to allow us to see you. And if you can unmute, From Lone Jack High School, Ian Pope, Carly
Hello.
Edwards,
Hi.
Jenna Jordan,
Hello.
Kirsten Stevens,
Hello.
sponsoring teachers, Bailey Appleton and Angela Gottsburen.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
From Notre Dame de Sion High School, Abby DeLong.
Hello.
Hi. And sponsoring teacher, Penny Selly.
Hi.
The winner in the 10th through 12th grade essay division is Jenna Jordan from Lone Jack High School. Her teachers are Bailey Appleton and Angela Gottsburen. We now invite Jenna to read her essay.
Art, Aesthetics, and Annihilation, Nazi Propaganda During the Holocaust. The Nazi Degenerate art exhibit opened in Munich in July 1937, filled with thousands of modern art pieces that somehow contaminated the Nazi idea of German perfection. This exhibit is one of many examples of how the Nazis sought to control German minds, alleging corruption by those they deemed other. As time went on, the Nazis escalated their campaign of propaganda to instill citizens with a fascist corruption. The persuasive art techniques used throughout all forms of propaganda made them more effective and successful. With the 7 elements of art, line, shape, color, form, space, value, and texture appearing within each and every piece, Hitler and his Nazi regime weaponized these elements to persuade the masses to execute over 6 million innocent lives. After the shameful loss of World War I, Germany was in desperate need of unity. Not soon after, the Nazi Party started releasing propaganda giving them the perfect scapegoat to blame for their troubles, the Jews. In order to effectively instill the German people with the idea that the Jews were a parasite, weakening their nation, they simultaneously developed the belief that the German people were superior, almost angelic. The vehicle used to communicate this concept was propaganda. One of the most important concepts that the Nazi Party communicated in these pieces was the perfect Aryan family, including a mother, a father, and multiple children. Another idea that the Nazis portrayed was that the German spiritual honor lay within serving their fatherland. Family roles in propaganda specified mothers caring for their children, often cradling a newborn child at their breast. The children were expected to be active members of the Hitler Youth, and the men were to work and to serve to protect their families. The most compelling aspect in which they conveyed their message was the depiction of art within each piece of propaganda. The Nazis effectively used lighter tones and angelic features to make the German people feel like they were part of a superior race. The specific art styles included families with many children to promote women to keep reproducing the perfect genealogy. Combining images with messages of strong emotional language assisted Nazis in their scheme to rally the nation, with their strategic use of the 7 elements of art alarmingly captivating to their audience. A horrifying component of Nazi propaganda is the attention to each minor detail, whether it be pamphlet, postcard, newspaper, etc. Educated and persuasive propaganda, the Nazis used the 7 elements of art, with each individual item possessing astonishing persuasive tendencies. One poster proved extremely powerful to the German eye, featuring an Aryan family casted in light and cream tones, giving them an ethereal appearance. This poster promoted birth and population growth, and it also encouraged those of model Aryan families to reach out to their local party organization for assistance if needed. Larger families would receive holidays, extra food, and help with children at home. In this poster, a large eagle towers in the background, and its wings encompass the family, symbolizing the omnipresence of the Nazi regime. The father protectively embraces and guards his family, and his son is featured at his side to represent the roles the men must fulfill. The mother, holding a newborn child in her arms with a soft, peaceful look on her face, is content in her role. Lastly, a little girl facing the audience brings true emotion of happiness to the picture. This piece is specifically meant to include those of the Aryan mold, giving its audience a sense of unity and solidarity with their nation. The encouragement of reproduction was to strengthen Germany's future and proved itself effective. Mothers who had child-rich families had the potential to win the Mother's Cross, with some even earning a gold-plated medal encrusted with diamonds for having 12 or more children. Even though the beautiful family image deemed itself perfect, it had a more sinister effect on those who were excluded. Critical to the Nazi Party's unification of Germans, they needed a scapegoat to blame for Germany's troubles, declaring Jews as their enemy. Propaganda such as anti-Semitic curriculum, pamphlets, and even postcards paved the way for escalating persecution. The horrific treatment of the Jews can visually be seen in countless anti-Semitic images prevalent in Nazi propaganda, depicting them as menaces to society. Dark images of Jews characterize them as repugnant, money-hungry, obese, and even animalistic in some cases. Again, the Nazis used persuasive art techniques in propaganda to outcast the Jews. Propaganda presented to the German public also used strong emotional language to convince Germans that Jews would poison the German people spiritually and destroy it morally. The Jewish people immediately felt the effects of the widespread hateful messages, and their persecution only escalated as they faced increasingly harsh treatment, culminating in their deportation to the killing centers in the East. Propaganda was the root of the abuse Jewish people experienced, and the Nazi Party fatally utilized elements of art to help this root grow into one of the most horrific genocides in history. Amongst the many forms of propaganda that helped fuel Jewish oppression and annihilation was the anti-Semitic cartoon titled Vermin, featured on the September 1994 cover of the horrifically anti-Semitic newspaper Der Stürmer. Germany near the end of the war, and most Germans grew tired of the war and loss. The message accompanying the cartoon stated, "Life is not worth living when one does not resist the parasite. Never satisfies as it creeps about. We must and will win." A large parasitic caterpillar-like figure featured in black and white crawls across the globe, stereotypically alleging a Jewish goal of global domination. The insect's face features a grotesque nose and hollowed-out eyes, framed by sinister eyebrows. The pupil of the right eye is the sickle and hammer, with the other eye reflecting a dollar sign, suggesting that the Jews were behind communism and capitalism. The scratchy, rough texture to the image creates the illusion of an ominous threat. The purpose of this cover intended to fill the German people with resolve, even as they were losing the war, desperately reminding Germans of what was at stake, even as most Jews had already suffered their fate in the killing fields across Europe. By creating an image with a dark artistry, the image urges Germans to fight exhaustively, even as their defeat was imminent. By using persuasive art techniques, the Nazis successfully convinced the German people to exclude the Jews, culminating in the destruction of millions of Jewish lives. When reflecting on the power of persuasion within propaganda, Eric Hoffer stated, "Propaganda does not deceive people, it merely helps them to deceive themselves." Hoffer's quote reveals that people will often go along with the message if it is convenient or beneficial to them. I agree with his quote because people have their own minds and free will, which may eventually reveal one's moral compass and hidden narrative. Although it is difficult to fight against the common crowd, we must do our own research to find the narrative behind the message. If what we find is false, it is our job to speak up for the truth.
Jenna, thank you for sharing your essay.
Thank you.
As an educator and a descendant of Holocaust survivors, I'm the second generation. I want to express heartfelt congratulations to you on winning this award. Congratulations to all of the finalists on a job well done. We hope this contest has given you a greater understanding of the dangers faced by society when a government augments divisions among its citizens. I want to acknowledge everyone who participated in this year's successful contest: students, teachers, parents, sponsors, the planning committee, and judges. I also would like to thank Jessica Rockhold, Executive Director of MCHE, for her help and leadership throughout the year. I encourage all the 8th through 11th graders here today to enter again next year. Later this week, we will post the top essays on the MCHE website. Thank you for being here, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you.